Welcome back. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on something we don't talk about enough, the design side of what we do. Because when most people hear STR loophole, they think tax savings, which is natural. And yes, that's a huge part of it. But the reason our clients make 70K, 80K, or 100K annual net cash, not gross revenue everyone talks about, is because the properties themselves are perform. And that starts with design. That's also how our clients scale. They go from property 1 to property 2 to property 3 by leveraging the rental income along with the tax savings. Each acquisition builds on the last. And over 3 to 5 years, what started as a tax strategy becomes a real income stream. One that gives you options, step back from your W-2 job if you want to, build serious wealth, and stop trading time for money. I've got Courtney with me today. She's our preferred interior designer, and she's actually more than that. She's a revenue partner. Courtney.
Thanks, Arda. I'm excited to be here.
So before we get into the case study, just give people a quick picture of who you are and what you actually do. That would be awesome, actually.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I am the founder and principal designer at Denori Designs. And what we do, people think about an Airbnb designer and think, oh, they must pick out pillows and couches. But we are really so much more. It's a very data-led designer approach. So we are looking at the market, we're defining guest avatar, we're looking at what amenities and what design aesthetics are going to perform and really drive bookings and increase the average daily rate. So everything we do is tied to the revenue outcomes.
And that's why we brought you in as a partner, not just a vendor. You have definitely skin in the game. Let's talk about this client. He's a spine surgeon in Florida, 2.1 million a year income, paying close to 41% in federal taxes, no state tax relief because Florida has no income tax, which sounds great until you realize that's nothing offsetting that federal bill either. So he came to us looking for a real solution, one that would substantially lower his taxable income while building a cash flowing real estate portfolio, something that actually moves the needle. We found him a property in Tennessee, 4,000 square feet, luxury mountain cabin, incredible views, indoor pool. And this was an existing Airbnb and already generating 166K a year in revenue. So this wasn't a turnaround project. It was already working, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, Arda. A lot of people think that you have to go find a distressed property to really make an impact in your revenue. But even a property that's performing has a ceiling. And usually there's a lot of room between where they're at and where they could be.
So what did you see when you first looked at this property?
Yeah, it had great bones. It was in a great location. You mentioned the views, the indoor pool. It had a lot going for it, but the design just wasn't doing the property justice when we took a look at it. The furniture, it was functional, but it wasn't memorable. There weren't bold accent walls. There was nothing that would distinguish the listing when a guest was searching for where they wanted to stay. And they had a $700 per night average. They were really leaving a lot of money on the table.
Mm-hmm. You are spot on. So could you walk us through what you actually did? Because you did your magic.
Thank you. Yeah, so we started by working with what was working within the property as far as the design aesthetic. So the couch was functional and it matched what we would want to keep in the property. We don't want to take out anything that will work because every dollar counts when we're analyzing ROI. So the budget, we put it towards things that actually are going to move the needle, like the barrel sauna, the outdoor amenities, instead of just going in and replacing every piece of furniture. We also added an outdoor fire pit, which performs really, really well in mountain markets, as well as a playground for our guest avatar of families. Then we did the interior design overhaul. We added the cohesive color palette and design aesthetic, and then set up for photos in a way that would capture the property and a way that would make guests stop scrolling.
And the budget for all of that, what was that?
So the renovation budget was $100,000 and the property was 1.36 million.
That's not a small number, but let's talk about what it produced.
Mm-hmm. So we're projecting a 35% jump in revenue. So you mentioned earlier it was previously making 166,000 per year. So we're projecting that to go up to 224,000 per year. So the average daily rate I mentioned earlier, $700, we're bringing that up to $945 as their average daily rate. And the cash flow, this is the best part. The cash flow goes from 50,000 a year to just over 101,000 a year. So more than doubled and just on a $100,000 renovation.
No, these numbers are impressive, right? And the tax savings on top of that, our surgeon clients saved over 100K in year one from the depreciation strategy alone. So total year one impact is north of $200,000 on a 300K initial investment. That's a 66% return in the first year. Let's go a little deeper on how you think about design, because I think people assume this is subjective, just make it look nice, but you do have a real process behind it.
That's exactly right. It is not subjective. It's very much a system where we go in and first look at the market. We look at the competitors in the market. How are they performing in that specific area? What are they missing that we could capitalize on and put in our properties and drive up that average daily rate like we talked about? So
That's
a mountain cabin in the Smokies needs a very different design aesthetic than a beach house in Florida to perform at the level that our clients perform at. So the design has to really speak to that specific guest avatar.
so it's data driven, not taste driven. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yes, so taste, of course, does matter. The photos have to be attractive. There has to be a cohesive design aesthetic throughout the listing, but that analysis of amenities and what the guest avatar wants is really driving every decision behind the aesthetic.
Understood. And you see this translate directly to the performance, right?
100%. The numbers do not lie, which is why this is not a subjective experience. It's very objective.
Let's talk about the market for a second, because the STR space has gotten a lot more crowded. Supply has grown significantly over the last few years. How does that change what you do?
That's a great question. It actually makes what we do with design even more important. When supply was low, you could put anything on Airbnb and it would book and you could make your revenue. Now, people are comparing up to 20 properties when they're deciding where to stay. So the question becomes, what's going to make them choose your property to stay at? If the only answer is they're going to choose my property because it's slightly cheaper, that's just a race to the bottom. Now, if your property has a sauna and it's designed beautifully, and that's the answer, if it's a destination that guests want to travel to, they become less sensitive to price and they're willing to pay a higher ADR to stay at your property.
So you are in a different category, right?
Exactly. We're trying to put our clients at that top 1% of the market. And that's not just a marketing line. That's what the data shows if you execute correctly.
Yeah. No, these are all valid points. I truly appreciate your input. So for our clients specifically, this isn't just about Airbnb income. Let me be very clear about that. What the property actually produces is what makes the entire strategy work. The depreciation offsets definitely help, but cash flow is very important metric for our investors due to the fact that they all have high paying jobs, interested in certain net income and ROI figures. So we do not buy a short-term rental property just for tax benefits. We factor in historical appreciation, but we do not bank on it. We always look for and buy a cash flowing STR. What I can tell you is a deal may be tax advantaged, but the tax advantage should not overpower the actual economics of the deal, right?
100%. Yeah, a poorly performing property isn't going to help anyone. And the design is really at work to make this whole model deliver.
So when people come to STR loophole, here's what they're actually getting. And I want to be clear about this because I think people still think of us as a tax strategy firm. But let me, kind of simplify things a little bit. So we find the property, we identify the right markets, the right assets. We handle acquisition, financing, the STR specific lending. We coordinate the tax strategy with the CPA. And then Courtney and her team come in and turn that property into a top producer. It's a complete system. The tax savings don't work without the right property. The right property doesn't reach its potential without the design or the right amenities. And none of it matters if the numbers don't hold up.
That's right. Yes. And so this client that we've been discussing in the case study today, he had zero real estate experience, right? He was a surgeon. He was actually thinking about buying a gas station before he found you, Arda. And now he has a property that's generating over 100,000 in cash flow and 100,000 in tax savings. And he's using those savings to fund his next project this year.
That's the model. You build one, it funds the next. Goal for this particular client is to move on to property number 2 in 2026 and 3 to 4 properties over 3 years. At that point, you are looking at 300 to 400K a year in passive cash flow and a similar amount in annual tax reduction. That's the point where medicine becomes optional, not because you quit, but because you have the choice. Courtney, this was great. So, where can people find you if they want to learn more about the design side?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This was a great conversation, Arda. And if people would like to learn more, they can find us on Instagram, Denori Designs. Our website is denoridesigns.com, and we're Denori Designs on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And before we wrap, if you are getting value from this, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every week we bring in real experts just like Courtney and give away knowledge bombs completely free. Now, if you are a high income earner, physician, tech professional, executive, and you are writing 6-figure tax checks every year with no real strategy in place, that's exactly the conversation we want to have. Drop a comment below or find the link in the description to book a call. We will look at your specific situation and tell you exactly what's possible. Thanks for listening.